Good Sunday morning and welcome to WGN-TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnick. This morning we bring you a special interview with a figure that helped shape a presidency. The world of the White House speechwriter provides infinite insight into the mind and the mission of the president. Well, my guest today started writing with Barack Obama in 2007. Over the course of his time in the White House, President Obama gave more than 3,500 speeches, and a new book tells the behind-the-scenes story of some of the most impactful speeches and dramatic days in the administration. It's called Grace, President Obama and 10 Days in the Battle for America. With special thanks to the Union League Club of Chicago, here's my conversation with speechwriter and author Cody Keenan. You're often asked, I know, how you met the challenge of being a top speechwriter for America's first African-American president, but your answer to that was really interesting in the book, so I will ask you about that.
It's a challenge. It's hard. There were plenty of times when I never felt whiter than when I was writing for the first black president. And as a speechwriter, you have to be able to write for anybody. I've written for women, and women have written for President Obama. But race adds some extra dimension to it because it's just. I don't think I need to explain race. But you haven't. An important part of speechwriting is a sense of empathy, being able to understand your audience, walk around in their shoes a little bit. But there are limits to that. You know, there are limits to the imagination. I've never had to live the experience of a black man in America. So you can imagine it, but you can't really quite get there. When I was working on his eulogy in Newtown, for example, after 20 little kids were murdered in their classrooms, I wasn't a parent at the time. I mean, you can try to imagine what it's like to lose a child, but you just don't get it. And in those times, I would talk to other people on staff, but really, he was our chief speechwriter. And before any significant speech where we would talk about race, I'd just kind of sit down and try to steal as much of his time as I can to really get into his head.
Well, and that's what I was after. That's what you wrote about, that you sort of said none of us were chief speechwriters. He was the chief African-American speechwriter dealing with all these issues. And you also said that Obama had to find that balance between hiding from his blackness, but also not being too black. I mean, he understood that. He faced that. And you write that he inhabited and inhabits both the black and white worlds.
Yeah, it was never a political decision on his part about how black to be, because he got to do both. People forget that he was raised by his white mother and his white grandparents and was imbued with their values and only met his father once in his entire life. But you grew up as a black man in America, you're black. That's just how it works. But he had a facility he didn't have to code switch. He could go into VFW halls in downstate Illinois, and the people he met were his grandparents. And he could also go into a black church on the south side, and the people he met were the people he knew. So he did have this facility with all different segments of America. And you know, people forget too, he won the white working class vote in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania twice, and was the only president since Eisenhower to win 51% of the vote twice. He was able to talk to everybody in a different way, and he was able to talk about politics in a way that was redemptive rather than recriminative. And he would give people the chance to change. He didn't do what a lot of Democrats now do, which is scold people or lecture or, you know, blame anyone for the sins of the past. He would actually give us the chance to do better in his speeches, and that was on purpose. He inserted this great line into his speech in Selma where he said, you know, what a remarkable thing it would be for the South to rise again, not by reasserting the past, but by transcending it. That's what he did with the Amazing Grace eulogy in this book too, is give people the chance to change.
When you wrote, did you write for Obama, to Obama, or as Obama?
That's a great question. The point is to write as Obama. When I failed on drafts, it was when I was writing to Obama and trying to impress him, which we always tried to do. But the ones that succeeded the most were the ones where you can just fully inhabit him and be him and write what he would say if he had the time, which didn't always happen. Sometimes it did, and it was like lightning. I often liken it to, if you ever spent any time abroad, you know, I spent my junior year in Spain. The first time you dream in a foreign language, it's kind of like that. The first time that I dreamt, and I still have anxiety dreams about Obama being like, where's my speech? And me forgetting that there was a speech that day. But the first time you dream in his voice, sort of, is when you've really got it.
Could you write, I mean, I think we probably get your leanings. You worked for Ted Kennedy, you went to Barack Obama, but you know, some people are like, how about you're teaching out at Northwestern? You have students who want to get a speech job. So it makes, I think, a lot of people wonder here, could you write for a president with whom you didn't agree on policy, because it is a job?
I could, but I wouldn't want to. It's not as much fun. The UK is different. I know a speechwriter at Number 10 who's been there now for 14 years, and he's on his 5th prime minister. And they view that as career service. I wouldn't want to do that. And we just don't do that here. The Bush speechwriters didn't stay when we took office. We didn't stay when Trump took office. You want somebody who can, I mean, speechwriting really should be a relationship. You want somebody that you fully understand, not just what they want to say, but why. You need to get in their head and understand their worldview. And besides, it just makes the job more fun.
And obviously, you have to understand him. So presidents, they always have to be strong. They have to be stalwart. That's who they are. It's what we expect. But Obama had and has an emotional side. And when it came to the Newtown, Connecticut, you write about observing Obama's raw emotion, saying it was more powerful than any words he said.
Yeah, see, I think that is strong. I think there's this outdated definition of manhood that men don't cry or express emotion, and for him to go up the day of the Newtown shootings, which was the worst day in the White House, and I had to draft his statement for that. He only cut out one paragraph, and it was again me trying to imagine what it was like to have children. It was this paragraph about, you know, being one of those parents outside the police tape, desperate, not sure if your child is alive or not. And he took that out. He said, it's too raw. I wouldn't be able to get through that. And he went out and gave the statement, and he actually did start crying and had to collect himself. But that was for the rest of our administration, that was the #2 most viewed YouTube on the White House YouTube page right after the night the Navy SEALs took out bin Laden, because I think people enjoy seeing that their president is capable of the same emotions that we are. Who didn't cry that day? I mean, it was so dark, so horrible to see that the president feels the same way, but then can also muster the resolve to try to do something about it.
The difference is you got to be with him after that speech. We all watched it. I had those feelings you talk about, but then you talked to him afterwards. What was his reaction? Did he see it as a sign of weakness? Was he okay sharing that?
Yeah, he was totally fine with it. And it wasn't something planned, you know, so we actually didn't even talk about it afterwards. It just happened. And then we only had 48 hours to write that eulogy. They wanted to do it on the mass shooting was on a Friday, and the memorial service was scheduled for Sunday night. So I went out on Saturday, and we talked about what to say, and he was still pretty shaken by the whole thing, and talked a lot about, I talk about this in the book, he was kind of grasping for something to hold on to, and he was talking about, much like I called my mother, who's here, hi Mom.
Hi, Mom.
I called my mother to ask, what do you say to America in a situation like this? And she and Obama basically said the same thing, which is that you just don't know what's true until you have a kid, and to feel their breath, to feel their hug, and to you know, Obama put it this way, little kids trust everybody, and for somebody to violate that trust is probably the worst possible thing you can do, and the only thing that we know that matters is our children. And I told him, I was like, oh, my mom told me that last night.
Wow. Coming up next, a lesson from the president, what Barack Obama told his staff to do when hitting a speech writing roadblock. Stay with us.